back for another episode. I am Sahib.
I'm Ed.
And we now have someone in between us because we've had enough of each other and we decided to split it all up. This is Harry. Harry's joining us for this latest episode on culture intersection with NFTs.
Cheers guys, thanks for having me.
No, pleasure. So Harry, do you want to kind of get us rolling on the first bit, so introducing us to it?
Today intersection between NFTs and culture, otherwise known as the tokenization of culture. The NFTs aren't just an image, aren't just like ownership on the internet, it can also be a contract.
To use the metaphor I used before, we're going to look at, from a legal standpoint and from a creative standpoint, the different things that we're going to jam back into that value bottle as a creator for the consumer. I think we're at this point because we're seeing completely different changes in distribution models. If we go back to like old school record companies, they owned the distribution model, whereas Spotify flipped that on its head, and now the next revolution is Web3, and what's that going to do? We're seeing consumers want to own something a bit more, as you've touched on about identity in the chats that we've had lots. And I think then that they're the main two drivers that are going to take us into the next level of how can I, who wants to be defined by this particular musician, have an ownership and a right in that in some way. So I've maybe said a bit much there for you, but
you could say then that our identities exist as much online as they do offline. Like we for example, something we've spoken about a lot is you'd happily go out shopping with looking like without a shower and also not looking your best. But when you post on Instagram, you make sure there's a filter, you're doing this, you're in your best clothes, all this kind of stuff. So like it can be argued that our online identities are as important as our offline identities, and NFTs really play into that. So what you buy, what you interact with, what's in your public wallet is a signal of who you are and what you care for and what you value online. And so I think that's probably a good segue. The first one I think we should talk about is music, because the music you listen to is a big signal of who you are, really.
Yeah.
And the clothes you wear, and the like obviously the social circles that you're in as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that second point is really key. Like, it's about one, obviously you enjoying the music, but then also if you listen to a certain type of music, you're then also in a community somehow. So whether it's a hip hop community, even going back like the Metallica, rock, punk movements, there's all these different movements where you can connect to different people as people. And then so the reason why this is kind of, I guess, relevant to me in NFTs is that if we look at the model where artists today get funded for music, it's really difficult, like to get signed by a big label. It's easier now because there's more and more labels, but throughout history it's been really, really difficult to get signed onto a label and actually get your album created.
Yeah, this is it for me. Yeah. It's the community is going to come from the creator in the first place. I think it was Kevin Kelly who wrote an essay around 1,000 true fans, and in old school or today, Adele has needed millions of people to be as successful as she is. Whereas actually Web3 allows, a writer on Substack or a pretty average artist to create 1,000 true fans who are paying roughly $100 or £100 a year, and that's a better living than the Human League get for their songs getting played on Spotify. Those royalties are dreadful, and I think your point about community is if you're able to then incentivize these people who are the early starters. We can talk about whether or not that's I'm going to pay money to fund this artist so they can get recorded or some PR somewhere. I then get rewarded in, say, a token in some way that helps that artist grow, and thus my value accrues more, and we gain this network effect through the spreading of the culture, right? Through the spreading of the network.
Exactly. And actually, just one example that came to mind was, so Frank Ocean's a good example of someone who's actually went direct to his own direct release, and obviously is one of the very few to do it. So like you said, going through a music label, you get that distribution. But what Frank Ocean did was he signed on to, I can't remember what music label it was, he exhausted his contract, and then he released his album so he could get most of the release, like the money from the release, and then actually got that direct engagement. And it basically ruins the creative process for them. And obviously, like you said, that's the Web3 hook, right? You as a creator stay true to your creative process.
And it also allows that community to feed back into the artist, right? The artist may have started off the community, or people have come around the artist. He now has a direct line of communication between them all through various different token sales, or other things that he could set up. Hey, where is my community base? Should I go and play in this town where my record label wants to play, or where all my community is in XYZ town? He's going to know that firsthand without all of the loops he's had to jump through in the first place.
So we go back old model, right? You're an artist, you're playing different gigs and stuff, you're playing with your friends, you're going around different gigs around the country, trying to build up a following. Then you've got to get scouted by a label who then produces your music and distributes it. A really interesting line in a new movie called Tick Tick Boom, it's like Lin-Manuel's new movie, and Black Thought, Tariq Trotter.
Yeah.
He does a song interlude, and he says, even off-Broadway's no guarantee that some MBA won't decide what you see. So in that, he's basically saying, like, actually a lot of the people controlling the distribution of art are businessmen. They're not necessarily artists, or they don't have a proper insight into what the community will actually like. So a lot of the incredibly creative people that are trying to break through have a gatekeeper, which is some MBA in a suit.
Yeah.
So maximize sales on this.
The incentives become completely different, right? It becomes about one person just needing 1,000 fans rather than one record label needing to sell as much as possible to keep shareholders happy. It's the complete inversion of that, like, pyramid somewhat.
100%. And in this new model, which a model that really NFTs are going to foster in today's world with social media and all this kind of stuff, these artists aren't just going around playing gigs and hopefully getting some fans. They're building up a social media following. They're building up a big presence online. And so with NFTs, instead of going to a record label and saying, hey, can you give me this, what's called an advance in the music industry, give me this advance, then I'll go produce my album with the money, I'll go and then I'll help you distribute it through this stuff. And then most of the royalties that come from the song, whether it's like 50, 60, 70%, then go to the record label. So really the artist is making most of their money off the advance.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead, you interact directly with your fans and say, hey guys, I'm going to release 20,000 NFTs. Based on how many you buy, in proportion, you're then going to get X amount of royalties for the rights for the song. So instead of then the record label getting 60-70% of the royalty rights because they've given you a big upfront advance, you're getting that advance anyway from the NFT sales, but then you're only giving away 20-30% of your album. Now, why is this good? Let's break it down into why it's good for the artist and why it's good for the
it actually gets better than that, right? Because you've kind of labeled in my opinion, like the gold standard of NFT. I want an NFT that's going to give me rights to every time that this song gets played. And how you value that NFT is going to be basis the value of the music over the next 20, 50, 100 years, right? And there's loads of need for clarity by the various lawmakers for NFTs to actually hold this, but it's definitely got the capability to do it. But there's then like tier 2 and tier 3, and well, as many tiers of NFTs you'd like to then be able to sell to the fan that can't afford everything. Let's say I can only really afford a ticket to go to one concert. Well, sell me an NFT, and that might be worth something in the future if it's a huge band. Or I can only afford to have a T-shirt or something. You can still sell to those fans that accrue value to your network, as well as and loads of different NFTs of different qualities above. 100%. Like I want dinner with the artist and stuff like that, all the way to the top. All of these things were only capable through some sort of rent-seeking intermediary that is a record label that just wasn't happening. Whereas now, as I say, the opportunity for artists to directly monetize and interact with their fan bases 100x more, right? Sorry, to go back to your
so I think for the artist, I mean you touched on some of those topics there, which is awesome, but so for the artist, one, I think the biggest benefit is you're not going through some gatekeeper. You've built up a community, you can just monetize it and create your album relatively quickly. Awesome. Two, those people that have bought your NFT are economically incentivized to promote your album. So you're getting user-generated content, user-generated marketing, all that kind of stuff for free, because they've invested in it. 3, gives you better access to actually interact with your community and build with your community. I mean, some stuff that you said in there that I love is that previously, if you find an artist that you love, so you find Drake early, you find Dave early, you find Nirvana early, these big movements, you're promoting their music to your mates and stuff. I found this album first, all this kind of stuff, but you're not winning in the upside. With this kind of model, because you actually win in the upside, because you hold that NFT, you get the royalty rights, and you have the option to sell, then you're actually economically winning in the upside of finding that artist early. So this is what
You
what we
can
mean by
gamify
token.
this,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because if I share, let's assume, I don't know who Drake is, but if I shared some of Drake's music, Drake could pay me in a coin or in a token that says, yeah, I'm a really good sharer, I'm accruing lots of value to this network, to this community, keep paying me. So then you're incentivized to share his music further, right? You can give me a free ticket to the next time he's in town if I have shared 20 versions of his album or done something like that, right?
Yeah,
Like
100%.
you can bake in this
and
gamification really easily.
And also,
You know, with like Nas, he's got the tiered model which kind of Ed spoke to on his like latest album. So you go from bronze all the way to like VIP, and with VIP you buy into the whole scarcity element of NFTs, where only 2 people get VIP access to a concert, along with a host of other things like Ed mentioned, right? What you get for bronze, silver and gold, the t-shirts, the CD sales, the vinyls, etc.
You're able to monetize all of your fan base, not just the ones that who can afford it, right? That's the
100%. And what I love about this is, so like I'm horrible at picking stocks, awful, terrible. I mean,
and
Mr.
clothes,
Wardrobe. But I can really tell you which artists are going to pop next, or which director is going to pop next. I've got a very good eye for, and I think a lot of people do, of what's going to be popular. If you find a good artist early, you've got a feeling they're gonna pop, and this gives you a way to almost like invest, like you would in the stock market, in the artists that you love.
It's actually creating like a different investment channel for your own knowledge, which wasn't there before.
Yeah, and I think it's really going to. This is a great thing for the artists, great thing for the people, but in my opinion, it's also a fantastic thing for culture. Going back to the concept of the gatekeeper, the access we have at mass to these really new artists is incredibly limited because people are worried about their top and bottom line, really. So they're not willing to take big risks on new artists. But if someone's building up a good following, it's a pretty good indication that there's a...
For me, it's good for culture, as I said, because you're going to have lots of different cultures, and thus hopefully a varied society, versus what kind of like Web 2 has done. It's tried to channel everybody down the same pathway, right? And you could argue that on the current internet, you never see anything original because somebody has paid for that advertising space to be in front of you. Web3 should break that back in that because there isn't that same need for your attention, but because your attention is going where it's going to be rewarded most. That'll do.
Thank you for another episode of the Growth Pod, Harry. It's a pleasure having you. Come back. Cheers.
Have a good one.
Bye bye.